I'd like to talk to you today about Parshat Pinchas. In Parshat Pinchas, we hear about how the land of Israel was going to be divided up amongst the different tribes. And we're told that this was done by a lottery. It would seem that what they did was to put everyone's names, the names of each one of the 12 tribes into a hat, together with the different divisions and different parts of the land of Israel, and they would pull out the name of one of the tribes and the name of a piece of land. And that's how it was decided who would get each piece of land. I think it's obvious that this was something that was being done by Hashem, of course, right? Hashem is, of course, causing how the goal is going to come out. Why didn't Hashem just say it? We have to still understand that. But there's a Tosfot in Masechet Shabbat who says that to do a lottery is prohibited in Jewish law because that's going against the commandment of Tamim Tiyu Im Hashem Elokecha, of going simply with Hashem and trusting in Hashem and not trusting and relying on other things. So how are we going to understand this seeming contradiction? On the one hand, the Torah tells us that that's the way we divided up the land of Israel, by doing a lottery. And certainly we see in the halachas of Jewish monetary law that there are many times when a lottery is done to decide how to divide property. So is that wrong? Is that considered as not being tamim with Hashem? We have to understand what type of a lottery is permitted in Jewish law and what type of a lottery is not permitted. The Gemara in Masechet Baba Batra tells us that the lottery that they did to divide up the land of Israel was totally based on Ruach HaKodesh, on what Hashem was telling people to do. Why? How do we know that? The Gemara tells us that in actual fact, Elazar was there with the Urim V'Tumim. The Urim V'Tumim was a special breastplate that the Cohen would wear, the Cohen HaGadol would wear, and you'd be able to ask questions of that Urim V'Tumim and they would get an answer. It would spell out an answer. That is how the land of Israel was divided up between the tribes, by clear Ruach HaKodesh. But then why does it say that they did a lottery? Afterwards, they did a lottery to confirm the results that they'd already heard from the Urim and Tumim. There are even opinions, Rashi says that the lottery, you'd speak out even the answer. It was a totally miraculous thing that was clearly directly from Hashem and wasn't relying on luck in any way. That was the lottery that they were doing when they were dividing up the land of Israel, and that's why that type of lottery was certainly permitted. Another type of lottery that we might do is when partners want to divide up their property. If you want to divide up your property, you've got a piece of land, and there are two sides to the land. It has to be divided between two brothers, for example, who've just inherited that land from their father, or maybe the father left two homes, and we have to decide which son is going to get which one, and they're both worth about the same amount of money. Then we would do a goral, we would do a lottery to see who's going to get which half. It's dividing up money. That is okay, as long as the two parties agree to do that. The two parties agree that we're going to do a lottery to decide who gets which piece of property. That's fine. There's no problem with that according to in halakha. But what about the type of lottery to find out who did something? Let's say there's a thief. Right, there are 5 people and one of them stole. We don't know which one. So we're going to do a lottery to see which one stole. That you're not allowed to do. To decide to punish this person or to let someone off because of a lottery, you're not allowed to do. Another type of lottery that you wouldn't be allowed to do is to know the future. let's say you're going to draw out sticks to see, are you going to be a rich man or a poor man? Should you do like this or should you do like that? Right? So where it doesn't make any difference to you what you do, and you just can't decide and you were to flip a coin, shall I go down the right path or the left path? Okay, that's fine. But where you want to know the future by your lottery, that's the type of lottery also that is going against Tamim to you in Hashem Elokecha, that you should go with Hashem simply. But having said that, there is one type of lottery to help you make decisions that is allowed. That type of lottery is opening a Chumash or a Tanakh, the whole book of Tanakh. People think about the question that they want to know and they open Tanakh and they look at the top right-hand corner, the pasuk that comes out, and see if you've got some type of an answer. You can't always rely on these things like black and white, but that, we're told, is asking Hashem. That's not like asking the stars or asking the lottery. That's asking Hashem by opening a Tanakh to get an answer to a particular question that might be bothering you or to help you make a decision. But you need to be careful about how you do that, not to rely on things 100%, just to use it as like a hint to you about what to do. I remember my Rebbe used to say that if you learn 3 hours straight without any interruption and then open a Chumash to get the answer to a question that's bothering you, that you can rely on. The idea is that you have to raise your spiritual level. Once your spiritual level is raised, then you'd be allowed to open a Chumash and to take on from the top right-hand corner, the posuk there, to take an understanding of what Hashem is telling you. Where that's written in the poskim that is permitted to do. So again, we've got 3 different types of lottery. A lottery to decide who did something, that's also to do today. A lottery to divide up property, that's allowed. And a lottery to know the future, that's not allowed, unless you're asking Hashem, opening up a Chumash or Tanakh to get an answer or a hint to what you're supposed to do in a particular situation. Let me finish off with telling you a story about a lottery that was done, a lottery to decide who's going to win a prize. A certain yeshiva wanted to raise money for a new building, and so they did a lottery. They sold lottery tickets. Hundreds and thousands of people bought tickets. They paid a lot of money, and the first prize was an apartment. A 3-bedroomed apartment. You can imagine on the day of the draw, there was a lot of tension. Everyone was waiting to see who's going to win the apartment. They put all the names into a big drum, turned the drum around, pulled out a name, and in the big hall, after a drum roll, they called out the name of the lucky winner. The lucky winner was there in the hall, and he came up to shake hands with everybody. And while he was coming up, they noticed that one of the numbers, one of the tickets, was lying on the floor. It hadn't been put into the drum. Everyone started saying immediately, hang on, the lottery wasn't done correctly. This guy's ticket wasn't in the drum. The guy that had just won was a smart thinking guy. He quickly took the ticket, he looked at it, and he saw the name and phone number. He called out the name. Is this person here in the hall? And the guy was there. And he said, look, I'm prepared to pay you $10,000 in cash. Don't demand a redraw. You agree? And the guy said, yeah, I agree. No redraw. I'm not demanding a redraw. I'll take the $10,000. The guy's just counting out the $10,000, but then suddenly there start to be a lot of whispering in the congregation there, and it started getting louder and louder. That people were saying, "No, hang on, we want a redraw. If someone's name was left out, we can all demand a redraw, not just that person." What's the halacha? Is it only the person that was left out of the draw that can demand a redraw? Or can anyone demand a redraw? That was the question that came up. And it's taking away the apartment from this guy. So he was going to make sure that we got a proper answer to this question. We found that the same question was asked, or a very similar one, was asked of Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin. Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin was one of the first chief rabbis of Jerusalem. The case that came to him was of 10 brothers that had to divide up their father's property. And he had 10 properties, 10 fields. So they did a lottery. They put in the name of each one of the brothers into one hat, and the different properties into another hat, and they draw out one name and one piece of property to see who would get what. There was one piece of property that everyone wanted, but they had all agreed between them that they're going to divide it up according to this lottery. But they all wanted to get this. So when it came out that Reuven was the one who got that piece of land, the other brothers said, look, we would just like to check that everyone's names were in here, that it was a fair draw. They checked in the drum, and they found that the name of Shimon, who lost, who didn't get this property, his name was in there twice. By mistake. It wasn't Shimon that did it. It was there by mistake. His name had somehow got into the drum twice. So he had a double chance of winning, it would seem. And Shimon is now demanding a redraw. The brother whose name was in the drum twice, he's the one that is now demanding that we do a redraw. Can he demand that? The question came to Reb Shiur Leib Diskin. Reb Shiur Leib Diskin answered with his usual pikhut, with his usual sharpness, that certainly Shimon can demand a redraw. Why? If Shimon's name had come out of the hat as the person who'd won, he would have lost, because they would have counted the tickets and seen that his name was in there twice. And they would have taken the land away from him, so he would have lost. In actual fact, by having his name in twice, there's no way he can win. It's as if his name was left out. And that's why Shimon can demand a redraw. But Reb Shiur Leib Diskin finishes off his tshuva with a beautiful point. He says, when you're doing a goa, when you're doing a lottery to divide up property, yeah, it's allowed, as long as everyone agrees. But it's totally dependent on siyata d'shmaya. It's all dependent on Hashem helping the person to win. The only time you can count on siyata d'shmaya, on help from Hashem, is when you do everything correctly. Where you don't do everything correctly, you can't rely on help from Hashem. And that's why any lottery that wasn't done according to all the rules of the lottery is invalid. And that's why in our case too, where the name of one name was left out of the lottery, and that person is agreeing that he doesn't mind losing because he's being compensated for having his name left out. Nevertheless, all the other people who lost, they can also demand a redraw, because the lottery wasn't done according to all the rules of a lottery. If you want siyata d'shmaya, you have to do everything according to the rules. A beautiful message, an important message for all of us to remember. Have a great day, everybody.